I'm Niroshan Madhampitike, the lecturer for the module Principles of Project Management. In this module, we are going to discuss very critical methodologies, practices, tools and techniques associated with project management. The intention is to give you the right competency and the skill that you need to go out as a project manager. Whether you will work as a project manager or you will be part of a project management team, the knowledge that you gain here will be very critical. So I urge you to pay your fullest attention on this particular module, learn it effectively, and that is going to give you much more credibility as a project management professional. Good luck, and let's get going. The first thing that we're going to discuss is the module contents. In this, we're going to take you through the learning outcomes that we need to cover in this module, as well as the contents and how these contents are being arranged during the course. First, let's have a look at the learning outcomes. Now, at the end of the module, you will be in a position to critically analyze the project management methodologies and tools for implementing a successful project. In this particular module, we are going to talk about quite a few project management methodologies. Number one, Prince2. Since it's been a UK qualification, Prince2 is being the mostly adopted project management framework there. So therefore, we will pay quite a significant attention on Prince2, as well as we are going to discuss the processes, practices from PM1, which is another widely adopted project management framework. Thirdly, we are also going to talk about agile project management. That is for you to understand the differences between the traditional way of managing a project and agile way of managing a project, that I feel will be very much crucial for you to go out as a project manager, because most of the companies nowadays are adopting agile as a project management mindset. So knowing how it works, knowing the differences between the traditional project management and agile project management thinking and practices will place you at the right spot. The second learning outcome is evaluate the approaches to human resource management for a successful project, noting cultural, social, economic influences. Now, here's the trick. As a project manager, if you got to manage the project team, managing the human resources is one of the challenging tasks. Why? Human resource is not so easy to manage due to various parameters, various reasons. From the moment you employ a set of employees, people involved in your project, it's very crucial how you could manage them. This involves looking into their personal interests, looking into the motivational level, looking into the team bonding activities, ensuring that people are working as a team, and also looking into the performance during the project. Right? My experience is that managing people is absolutely crucial. Managing people is also one of the major success factors for running and leading a project effectively. The third outcome that we are going to discuss is the role of quality and risk management in delivery of successful projects. Now, there's no argument when we say quality and the risks are mainly affecting the project success. Now, what does this quality aspect mean? In managing the iron triangle, that is three constraints, namely scope, time, budget. You need to pay a lot of attention on the quality aspect. That is to check if your product, if your project delivery is meeting the expected quality standards, quality benchmarks that you have agreed with your client. So in terms of quality, you will have a lot of practices, a lot of discipline that you need to implement within the team. The second aspect that we will also talk about is risk management. How do I manage risks within my project? If you have heard, this is again a crucial thing. My experience is if you are not being able to manage the risk effectively, you will not be in a position to manage the project. Managing risk is absolutely essential for delivering a project effectively. That is to see what risks are available and what responses we need to come up in order to mitigate and avoid certain risks in order to deliver the project successfully, right? Within the agreed scope, agreed time, and agreed budget. So it's very challenging. So let's see how we could manage risk as well as quality during a project life cycle. The last thing, that is the fourth outcome, is evaluate the usefulness of current tools and software such as Prince2 as well as PMBOK. So we're going to discuss these methodologies and give you the right knowledge, understanding about managing projects using these methodologies. So at the end of the module, you will be in a position where you understand the project management as a discipline, its approach, its practices, tools, and techniques that you can take away and start practicing in your next project. So let's see how it goes. Now, I want to take your attention on the contents. So I'm going to quickly brief you what is the contents and what is the organization of these contents during the course. The session 1 is focused on introduction to projects in organization. That is to talk about quite a few things. Number 1, implementation of strategy through projects. Now, here's the trick. Projects are at the production level. Projects are the final activity that you're going to do. But before you reach to a project level implementation, there has to be a strategy decided by the organization, by your client. So that strategy will be narrowed down to a project after many level of planning that you have done, right? So obviously, why you need to work on a project is to contribute towards a strategic goal, strategic objective. So we are going to discuss the link between the strategic planning as well as project planning. The second thing under this particular session we are going to discuss is project portfolio management. We also give a bit of introduction to portfolio management, talking about the relationship between the strategic objectives and the portfolio goals and objectives, and then project objectives. Then we are going to talk about team organization, how the organizations structure the teams, what kind of teams structures are available, what would be the right team structures for your project situation. Also, we are going to talk about project definitions. Certain definitions that you have to be familiar with will be discussed here. Finally, we are going to talk about integrated project planning and control. Right, so this is one of the crucial aspects. In terms of project management, we need to know how we could integrate all the planning and the controlling measures that we have done during the project management life cycle. So the session 1 is primarily based on the organizational level knowledge that you need to have as a project team or a project manager. Now let's have a look at this session number 2. Session number 2 is primarily talking about the project management principles. That is to take you through very critical, very basic principles of project management before you jump into the deeper contents. So under this, we are going to talk about understanding the client objectives, then understanding the business case, understanding the project constraints, as well as understanding project objectives. So pretty basics, but we are going to discuss them in detail so that you will be equipped with the right knowledge about the principles of project management before you jump into the deeper contents. Session number 3. Session number 3 is all about process groups. Whether you follow Prince2 PMBOK or any other project management methodologies, there'll be various phases of your project, right? These are also known as processes. These processes will allow you to work on different areas of your project life cycle in order to ensure that you do the right thing at each phase, right? So under this particular session, we are going to talk about introduction to project management body of knowledge, history of PMBOK. Then we talk about the project life cycle, right? These are the steps involved during your project management life cycle. So it runs in a cycle because it starts at one point and goes in multiple steps to reach to the end of the project. And once the project is in, it may repeat again in order to accommodate certain changes. So it's very important that you understand that project life cycle. Then we're going to talk about 5 basics of process groups, right? So that's again crucial, understanding what processes are involved in your project management approach. Then we are going to talk about reasons why projects fail, just a kind of a glance at reasons why projects have failed based on the statistics and surveys done by various professionals and organizations. So it's quite useful for you to know what could be the reasons if any project has failed in the history. Then we are going to talk about PMI knowledge areas. Why? Because there are 10 knowledge areas that you got to manage according to PMBOK curriculum. So personally, I totally value these knowledge areas because the knowledge you have on these 10 knowledge areas will allow you to ensure that you pay attention on appropriate knowledge areas when you manage a project. The next thing that we are going to discuss, which is the last thing for this session, is talking about integration, scope, time, cost, quality, HR, communication, and all these knowledge areas are to be discussed. So at the end of the module, you'll have a proper understanding about the process groups involved in project management life cycle. Session number 4. Session number 4 is focused on project scope management. Now, this is the point we start digging deeper into detailed concepts, detailed practices. Managing scope is one of the primary critical task that the project manager has to do, together with the project team, of course, right? What this means is that you are responsible for managing the scope of your requirements, scope of your work. If you have worked in previous projects, you would agree with me that not being able to manage the scope, the requirements of the client is one of the major reasons to fail. So ensuring that project scope management is done effectively will ensure that you deliver the project on time with the right budget. So under this, we are gonna talk about the overview of scope management processes. So if you look at the scope management, that has many sub processes, right? We are going to talk about them. Then we are going to talk about product and project scope, plan, scope management process. These are the steps involved. These are the sub processes involved, right? You plan it, then you collect the requirements, right? There's a process for that. Once you have the plan, then once you collect the requirements, then the next step is defining the scope process. So you're going to define how exactly the scope will be managed. Then at the end of defining the scope process, you're going to come up with a work breakdown structure. Work breakdown structure is allowing you to list down all the project activities, project tasks that you have to do during the project, right? With the given hierarchy, because there can be multiple levels of activities that you do. So you're going to create the work breakdown structure. Then at the end of the process of creating the work breakdown structure, you're going to validate the scope process. That is, looking at the process that you have put down, ensuring that this is in line with what you want to envision in accomplishing, achieving after the project is implemented. Finally, we are going to talk about control scope process. How do we control the process? So this controlling will start during the execution. And then during the execution, you're going to look at the scope that is being implemented and then control appropriately. If there are any deviations for the agreed scope, then you're going to adjust. So that is what all about controlling scope process. So altogether, we are going to look at the scope management perspective in detail. Alright, so the next session, that is session number 5, is about project planning. This is a lecture that you should not miss out, because if you are not being able to do this project planning effectively, you will never be a good project manager. So therefore, ensure that you properly go through this particular lecture to ensure that you have the right knowledge and the competency required to be a project manager. Alright, so under this session, we are going to talk about 5 things. Number 1, developing a project plan. We are going to discuss how you could create a project management plan. Second, building a project network. So we are going to discuss one of the major ways, the major techniques used in planning. That is building a network diagram. Network diagram is basically a way of a graphical way of representing what activities are involved in the project and what is the flow. What critical activities have to be considered for your project execution. So it's very crucial. So the third thing that we are going to discuss is key features of a project plan. So in building a project plan, what are the key features that you have to consider? So we are going to discuss that. Also, we are going to talk about different techniques, different approaches to create a network diagram. That is activity on arrow and activity on node. 2 techniques used. We are going to discuss and do a few simulations in order to understand how we could create a proper network diagram. Finally, we are going to talk about concurrent engineering techniques. That is to ensure that you also know the technical aspect of planning, right? So it's going to be one of the critical sessions. Therefore, I hope you're going to go through it properly. Session number 6. Session number 6 is all about project time and cost estimation. So if you look at the PMBOK, this is one knowledge area. It's actually 2 knowledge areas: time management and cost management. So we are going to talk about both of it, take you through the knowledge required for you to plan your time management aspect as well as cost management aspect. So at the end of the session, you will be able to create a time estimate, and based on the time estimate, you will be able to derive at a cost budget. So the end goal is for you to understand what aspects you need to know, what areas that you need to know in order to manage time properly and also estimate the time. Once you estimate the time, then you are going to learn how you could create a budget or cost forecast based on the time estimates that you have done. Session number 7. So this is a session that I have allocated for teaching you Prince2. So you're going to start learning Prince2 as a project management methodology, and this is the session where we will be in a position to relate what we learned so far with the Prince2 concepts, right? So if you look at different methodologies like PMBOK and Prince2, they mostly talk about the same discipline, same practices, same approach. However, the techniques and the practices are slightly deviated, slightly different. So we are going to discuss the differences. We are going to see how Prince2 can fit into what we have discussed so far. So under this, we are going to talk about the basics, like understanding the project management according to Prince2. We will discuss those 7 principles, and then 7 themes. Prince2 follows 7 themes in managing a project. So we are going to discuss them. Direct a project according to Prince2 and key controls. So once you know the basics, then we are going to talk about managing projects using Prince2. Right. So under that, we are going to talk about 4 major areas: structure of Prince2, detailed understanding of the principles and themes of Prince2, the Prince2 process model, and elements of a project management plan. Session number 8, PERT and CPM diagrams. PERT charts, PERT diagrams, as well as critical path modeling. That is basically to understand, once you have a network diagram, how do we identify the critical path of your project? That is to say, these are the critical steps that you cannot miss out. So we will talk about that. So first, introduction to PERT and CPM. Second, similarities and differences between PERT and CPM. So these 2 techniques in comparison. Classroom exercises, we are going to do a few exercises so that you understand what we have discussed. Project time and cost analysis using network diagrams. So this is the knowledge that is required for your assignment as well. So stay tuned. Finally, we are going to talk about the Gantt charting, and we are going to allow you to create a Gantt chart during the classroom session. Session number 9. The entire session is allocated for constructing a network diagram. That is to allow you to understand what we have discussed so far in terms of planning using network diagrams and PERT charts, also ending up at a CPM, critical path. So this module will allow you to practice what we have discussed so far, pretty much everything in terms of planning, and then master it with the practices. Yeah. So the final session is about project risk management and agile approach. Right. First, what I want to talk about is risk management. So that's basically taking you through certain theories of risk management and then giving you the tools to manage the risk. Finally, I want to allocate about 1 hour time in discussing the agile project management. That is to give you the right understanding about the traditional way of project management and agile way of project management, and give you the knowledge that you need to understand in terms of managing a project. So when you know the traditional approach, traditional practices and agile practices, you can customize those practices to run the projects effectively. So I think the overall the module is going to be a great module for you, all of you, and probably the starting point for you to become a project manager. Right? Therefore, I urge you to stay tuned, focus on these contents, learn it properly, and if you do have any questions, you can always reach out to me. Good luck.